Ladies and gentlemen, patriot, truth seekers, digital warriors, welcome back to the show again. I did tell you guys I'm on this generational run, and today I'm not here by myself. I'm with the man himself, the guy you've been seeing on the TV, on all these right wing television, or maybe the left as well. He's out there creating, mobilizing the youth, the young, the old to come out, not just alone, but with tractors. That's right. We've seen it in Liverpool, we've seen it in London, we are seeing it everywhere. And they've been out there holding banners, no digital ID. This guy's, well, it's sounding the alarm, is waking the rest of the world to the technocrat machine, to the elites that's trying to capture us and put us in this digital surveillance, this slave system. And he's out there with receipts, making noise. And he's not just a co-founder, he's a truth teller. And my guest today is the one and only Alan Miller. How you doing, sir? How you doing?
Very good. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you. I appreciate you for having the time to come and talk to us today, because we are on the channel. We are passionate about this, about digital surveillance, digital ID, and all these stuff. Tax on farms and all these labor government legislation that they've been pushing or hinting that they're gonna do. So seeing you from afar, echoing the same thing that we've been echoing, is only right for us to unite and create this bigger microphone, so then we can wake up a lot more people. Now, I don't know you as much, and I'm sure some viewers who are tuning in, who will be tuning in, will probably not know you as much as well. So could you take a moment, maybe a minute or two, and explain who you are and how you got into this as well? And
Yeah,
then we'll get into all the stuff that's been going on.
sure thing. So my background is in hospitality. So I was in there for a long time, for about 30 years. I started off putting on the early acid house parties, the big rave parties around the world, in Australia and here in Europe and in Britain. And that led us on to launching a place called the Old Truman Brewery in Brick Lane in London, which was a quite a rundown part of East London, which we helped transform. And we anchored it with a few different places, and one of them was called the Vibe Bar. And we did that for about 20 years, fashion, music, film, art, until it became the case that we were kind of targeted. And I never really knew why until later. But basically, it was the start of this idea that the public is infectious, they're a problem, and we need to shut things down. And also the way the police had a knee-jerk reaction to underfunding and being asked to do too many things. And through that process of having transformed a part of East London and being very involved in it, and then seeing that we were being held accountable for problems rather than being seen as solutions, I went on to launch with a number of people something called the Nighttime Industry Association. So we lobbied for about 6 years for nightlife, and we got ambassadors put in cities with mayors. We did task forces. We worked to get the Home Office and the Treasury Department and the Prime Minister and everyone to understand the value of night and day and business and working together, that hospitality could work with the police and councils and all the other people involved to improve our cities and transform them, and that we weren't like the enemy. And it worked very well. And I ended up speaking internationally and working with different people about how to transform cities and improve them and keep areas open. And that's how we get the kind of cultural things that we've got, everything from Fashion Week and the dance floor from the 50s onwards, really, to how we get artists like Stormzy and Adele, all from the dance floor. We did all that. And everything, we were like friendly with everyone, and everyone was going well until they decided to lock down everything. And when that happened,
Yeah.
all the shutters came down, and we'd spent years convincing them that what we needed to do was open things up and engage people and talk. And then the shutters came down, and I had run a campaign with some people called Open for All, which was like with 1,000 hospitality operators, to say we did not want to have a papers please society. We weren't going to have vaccine passports when they started talking about it.
Yeah.
Then what happened was, and there were lots of people campaigning in different areas. We knew people with big platforms. Some of your guests, your viewers, sorry, will know a lot of them, and they're people that all move in the kind of new independent media sphere. But what happened was Boris Johnson had his so-called Freedom Day and then said,
Yeah.
by the way, we can have vaccine passports. And Wales did start having vaccine passports. And we just said, right, they're not listening to us. It doesn't matter how big a following any individual's got or group. We need to get all the groups and all the organizations together, all the campaigners, people of faith and secular, and
Mm-hmm.
say this is like a really key point. And basically, we have to stand united on that as an umbrella organization, as together.
That's right.
And so we had a meeting, about 150 people attended in a nightclub, funnily enough. And that led to launching the Together Declaration, which with 6 key principles, but the main one around free speech, that we should never have lockdowns, that we do not need vaccine passports. We did not want them. We should
Mm-hmm.
not have a mandatory jab. People should always be able to make a choice,
That's right.
make a decision, and that children should never have this one. They didn't need it. There were 6 key principles, and we launched the togetherdeclaration.org, and very quickly got a couple of 100,000 signatures for people saying they did not want vaccine passports, these
Yeah.
kind of digital IDs,
Mm-hmm.
to get in to have access to places. And that we then took that along with 160,000 other signatories about the jab mandates to challenge that. We worked with a lot of frontline staff, 100,000 frontline staff, after we lost 45,000 care workers before we were in existence. So we'd already lost 45,000 care workers who wouldn't take a procedure, even though they'd been looking after people.
Mm-hmm.
Then they were threatening frontline NHS staff. We worked with them, and we basically took this to Downing Street. We did a lot of protesting, campaigning, leafleting, calls to action, with people speaking to MPs and councillors and NHS trusts and universities, and people doing all sorts of meetings and events around the country.
Mm.
And we have a lot of ambassadors locally, regionally, and nationally. So we kind of did all that, and we ended up with all the people we were working with being able to be successful at that point of holding at bay the digital ID, the vaccine passports, and having the mandatory jabs stop. Now, just to say as well that when you look back, people say, "Oh, they were never going to do it." But I mean, in Australia and Canada and elsewhere, a lot of people said they don't, good luck, but we can't see you winning this one. And it didn't, and it was just a testament to how much people worked together and were prepared to put themselves on the line and just say, this is unacceptable. This is not how we do things in Britain. And
Mm-hmm.
the important values of privacy and conscience and choice and judgment and democracy and freedom, they're all really essential values. And so that's where we were born from. That's where we came from.
That's where together came around.
Yeah.
What a story, man. I think a lot of people who are in this, especially the freedom fighters, freedom of speech, all freedom of control and all these things, civil liberty and all these groups kind of got together during COVID or after COVID. I think COVID kind of woke up a lot of people and united the right people together. Do you see that as well? Because
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly. I think that the irony of, so when you get a government that does these totalitarian things and just censors people and spies on them and shadow bans them and shuts them down, suffocates them and tells them, calls them names and does all these things and keeps repeating the same thing, and then it becomes apparent, then understandably it infuriates people. And even before all those things were entirely clear, obviously we've had the lockdown files, the Twitter files, and we've had all those things.
Yeah.
But even the treatment of people at the time, people were furious about. And what I found was that there were new friends made, new fellow travelers, and perhaps some old associates lost. There's some people really bought into the whole fear PR and don't leave the home, don't do this, don't do that, and sort of talking about one another and screaming at people. And then there were others that perhaps I wouldn't have necessarily thought I wouldn't have met them. And a lot of people wouldn't have met each other. So the irony of these impositions is that they ended up creating quite a formidable group of people that now kind of work together and are united on some things. Listen, we don't agree on all sorts of things, but we've got fundamental principles that we agree on. And they're the issues that we address it together, right? Particularly around free speech, around the rights to not be surveyed, and a number of those key critical values.
Yeah. So just I want to focus like 5 minutes on the corporation itself, the institution, the company, the movement. So how do you define the values at Together movement? What is it that you guys are fully fighting for, and what was the spark that you thought of, apart from COVID, which obviously it was like a wake up call for a lot of people? But I'm sure there's so many more stuff, that so many more cornerstone that has brought together stronger and probably more even defiance than ever before. And what would you say those core values are today?
Yeah. So they're definitely free speech. That's the
Free
fundamental
speech.
bedrock. Because if you don't have free speech, if you don't have the ability to say things and speak, then you have no other freedom.
Mm.
So that's a real bedrock. A real bedrock as well is that we should have no centralized government digital ID.
Right.
That was a key part of
It's a
everything, and
big one.
that's what the Together Declaration was really all about. And then that we should always have the public front and center. The public is the demos, the public, the people. The only thing that keeps elected representatives and everyone else accountable is a strong public.
Mm-hmm.
And that we want to and insist on and are obsessed by growing a strong public, working with the public, making sure we get our voices heard, organizing, and have us be able to assert our muscles as the public on whoever's elected and voted. And, since we started, all sorts of new political parties have launched, and independents and people that we're friends with and we know, and people that we're not friends with and we
Yeah.
don't, but
Yeah.
which is important and interesting and exciting. But we still maintain that whether we stand or anyone stands, we need a strong public to say, well, look, you said you're going to do this, but have you done it? And also, you need to do this, because the
So
way that we keep
accountability.
exactly, and the
It's,
way that we push things and make things happen is that the public usually in the modern period have been the ones who have at the forefront of that. It's never been so much, oh, the bright and smart people say, oh, I'll just give you this and give you that. Ostensibly, it's always been a public in the modern period that said, well, we demand this and we want this and we're going to make sure this happens.
mm,
We've had 3 decades of technocrats that look and sound very similar,
that's
that
right.
have become very contemptuous of the public, and they like to
Mm,
call the public lots of names, and they are scared of the public, but they're also dismissive and contemptuous of the public. And now's a new time where a lot of that's been washed away, and we very much see ourselves in the spirit of that kind of public oriented, like the demos, and engaging people. And that's why we want to appeal to everyone. I mean, people call themselves names like left and right and center. I
yeah.
think a lot of those things, people still understand some things like that. But a lot of those big discussions of the 20th century have kind of gone away. The big questions now are where you really stand on fundamental principles and
That's
values
right.
around things,
That's right.
enlightenment values. And I think that those things, and having the public insist on them and being strong, that's what really together is. So every campaign we've done, whether it's about low traffic neighborhoods and not proper consultation, whether it's about net zero, we've had a very effective campaign called no to net
Mm-hmm.
zero.uk,
Mm-hmm.
that all these things have been about not being engaged and discussed with, having things done to us without proper scrutiny or discussion or engagement, often not having things in any manifesto,
Mm-hmm.
like digital ID,
Yeah.
like
Nobody asked
cash,
for this.
yeah, or saying we're going to do one thing and then getting elected in and then doing something completely different, like with the
Yeah.
farmers.
Yeah.
So
With the
across the
farm.
board, we're about the public having our voices heard. That
Y-
goes to the heart of it.
Yeah. Totally. And you kind of address something really important here. A lot of people usually miss it because they brand the public into, they put us in like a group where you're left, right, oh, so liberal, or this and this and this, and then they bring something and we all fight because we are left. Oh, I'm fighting the right because the right disagrees with this thing. I'm fighting the left because the left disagree with this thing, while the people in power just want whatever they want. And I think with your campaign, what we've seen, I mean, what I've seen, I've noticed that almost everybody can relate to it. Left, right, on whichever side they are, they can always relate. Like the digital ID, when they announced it early this month, when K Starmer stand there on the pulpit saying stuff like saying, "Hey, nobody will be able to work unless they have it." I think, and then I think it was when you guys launched and you went out there, I think Liverpool, you demonstrated. You could see there were a lot of people. There were people on the left and people on the right, old, young, all rallying behind that side. Why do you think that is? Do you think it's because they also believe that digital ID is not a bad thing? Sorry, it's the bad thing as well. Or do you think just this left right really means nothing? To be fair, do you think
Well,
that
I
is
think,
breaking, or do you think the so
yeah,
let me try. I want my viewers to
I
understand
got
the
your
question.
question.
Yeah, I
I got
also
you.
want the viewers to understand.
Yeah.
So do you think the left and right group has basically become meaningless, or do you think the cause itself is just so powerful, is bringing both sides together?
Yeah. Well, I think a few things are going on, right? So, for the most part, the historic explanation of left versus right. So, if you were right, you were more about uh, the state, a small state. You were more about tradition.
That's
You
right.
were more like a conservative, let's say. But particularly, it was around the economy and the
That's
big
right.
discussion about the economy. Were you more like Hayek and Milton, Friedman, or were you more on the left? Were you more either someone like Keynes, a Keynesian, or were you someone more socialist, or even
Yep.
a communist? Or
Yep.
there was a big debate about how to organize the economy and society, and that was the clash of the 20th century. And often it was brutal. Now, as things have developed and transformed in the 21st century, some of those conversations gone away. It became much more a series of culture wars, as they call them, and a question around values, around culture. And so I think that some people who identify themselves in this identity politics and identity, as people were rooted less and less in principles on left and right, it became much more emotional, emotive, and it became much more about identity politics. And I
Yep.
think that's really problematic.
Easy
But
to
that's
control.
happened on what they called the left and what they call the right a little
That's
bit,
right.
right? So you've got a bit of a woke left, and you've got a bit of a woke right sometimes, right? But I think that it's superficial somewhat when you really start, because if you start asking people to engage in their fundamental principles, their guiding rudder, but then a lot of people on what they might call themselves the left, they won't necessarily do that or be able to. And I don't look, I don't want to just basically say everyone, because there's obviously some very smart people everywhere, right? Who've
That's
got,
right.
they've thought through things, and they have a kind of wedding to a set of, they anchor themselves to some ideas and views about things. Generally it's about the state, right? And often to what extent, if you really want to boil it down, the left and the right, how they view the state to a certain extent. But I don't really like those terms so much, left and right. And I do think um that what's happened with this digital ID is that people, for lots of reasons, have concerns with it. So either you come from a bit more of a libertarian background, and that could be left or right, but you come from a libertarian background and you think the state generally are problematic, and they're like a intention to constantly have more control and constantly tax more and interfere more, and then have an ever bigger public sector that's ideological. All those things are a big concerns to them. Then you've got people who've been very concerned about the role of the state. Let's say the big questions around, and we know digital ID, facial recognition, the issues of discrimination. Then you've got people that are concerned about data breaches and leaks, and are concerned around kind of those like principles, liberal principles. And so you've got a lot of different views, and you could share like someone from Diane Abbott or Jeremy Corbyn right the way through to Nigel Farage and other. I mean, we all know different names, but the point is that there are people from the spectrum, and that's not because, I mean, I'd love to take the credit for that at Together, but that's not because of what Together does. That's because a lot of people have got genuine concerns. What Together has managed to do is uh, to focus on a series of campaigns, effective change in a number of areas, and to do a number of things. So we do calls to action that lobby MPs and councillors, but also things like NHS trusts or universities, but now things like Companies House, the
Yep.
Department for Business and Trade, the Treasury, the Institute of Directors, the Federation of Small Business, Hospitality. So we'll be going, in our campaigns, we engage with the public and encourage them to contact the press, the mainstream press, to say, why aren't you covering it? Are you covering it? We'll encourage them to let their MPs know about it, and their vote's going to depend on it, and councillors. We'll encourage them to contact various institutions and organizations and say, this is what we think, because they often don't hear from people. So our
Yeah.
strategy is to do that and to get press. and to then do rallies and protests and campaigns and people to vote and if they want to stand. But we have what we call a 360 approach. So really engage from start to finish in every aspect, local organizations, getting flyers out on streets, putting them into shops, getting local meetings. We have ambassadors locally, regionally, nationally, because we really want to keep the pressure up and have boots on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And from that point of view, and you saw it, as you say, at Liverpool, our recent protest, there were people who've got very different views, right, on a number of issues that all came to rally with us on this. So that is encouraging. Obviously, we all probably want to sort out the other issues we don't agree with as well at some point. But there are these questions, like whatever you think on any issue, if you can't speak freely, that's a problem.
That's a big problem.
If you can't meet, when you can't do it, and then if you can't meet freely, or if where you go you're surveyed and spied on, and then you've got some kind of central system that says you can't do this, you can't go there, you can't have access to this, or we're going to take you off banking here. Any of the things we've seen already, but can be intensified from a centralized state digital ID.
That's right.
Then we've got big problems as well. So there are lots of concerns for people from different views because of the implications and how this can be used.
To every single one of you who has walked this road with us, not just the easy win, but the tough, heavy storm, I want to reach out my hand to you, sir, and say thank you so much. Thank you so much, missus, because you didn't just fund a platform. You didn't just support creator. You stood for something sacred, something real. The idea that truth should never be owned by the politicians, by the elites. So thank you so much. Because we're living in a world where headlines are shaped by propagandists. We're living in a world where narratives are created by a politician's agenda. So staying true and telling you the honest truth isn't just hard anymore. It's becoming radical. And we've never taken a penny from any corporation or political party, because we understand that journalism should never be funded by the elites, should never be funded by politicians. Journalists should only be accountable to the people they serve, not the people that they meant to caution. But staying independent comes with a lot of cost. It means no more access, no access to fancy meetings, no access to big donors. So we're choosing integrity. We're choosing morals, and we're choosing to put stories in front. And trust me, that's a cost I'm willing to take. That's why we need you, not just as donors, but as people, as defender of truth. As people that believe that truth isn't a luxury, it's a right. It's a right that every single person in a country deserves to get. And if you've been watching the mainstream media lately, I'm sure you've felt a quiet rage when you see a story being told in a different way, when you see the truth being twisted, when you see suffering being ignored, when you see the powerful few rewrite history and take over narrative and rewrite reality. And now this is the moment that stops. Every single contribution that you make to this channel is a refusal to be manipulated. It's a stand against distortion. And if you believe that journalism should be factual, if you believe that journalism should be unbiased, then this is your time for you to stand with us. Donate right now and build this movement with us. Be the reason why the truth survives in this country. Thank you so much. Yeah, you did a lot there. There's a lot of things to unpack there. So you could tell you are together, the way you guys, either you guys are just so smart the way you've built this, or maybe the government is just so silly the way they've been doing their thing. Because the way you just explained how Together is run, it's a very democratized, where normal average young people, young and old, are involved. Because I see grammars, I see young kids with a banner. I'm thinking, all right, so everybody's on this. People from different color and different religion are all together. I'm like, wow, this is really, really cool. And the way you just explained it on how you get the people in power to know who's in power by letting them know, hey, people will vote if you do not do this. I think a lot of people. I think a lot of people are waking up to that, and of course, I want to give you that credit. I know you don't want to give yourself that credit, but hey, I think partly because of you and together and everybody else who goes and rally the troops and get people waking up and realizing that they have the power, and every single chance they have to vote, they demonstrate that. Now I wanna go into what you're fighting on right now, which is, I think we all know, the digital ID. This one, it's not a new thing. I don't think a lot of people think this is like a for those people who are joining the political fight, this struggle here, this digital ID. Well, you might think this is a new thing, but actually, Alan, you know that this is not new. This has been going on for time. We had a cool guy. I think he goes by the name of let me see. Oh, was he Tony Blair? Maybe, yeah. We had this guy who was been calling for this and calling for this for like 30 years plus, and finally now it's not coincident that we have Keir Starmer pushing it. Could you tell us why? From what you know so far, from the time where this Tony Blair started bringing it up till today, could you tell me why they would want this? Because they're telling us that, hey, it's to keep the young people safe. It's to keep the illegal migrants out. It's to make sure people are not working illegally. All these nice, fluffy, good stuff that most people might be like, yeah, that's good. Could you tell us what is actually the reason why they would want to push this? And please try to go way back than just what Keir Starmer's announced, because this has been going on for long.
Well, it has been going on for long. I mean, actually, it was Winston Churchill in 1952
that far. God.
That abolished national identity cards after the war, and he said, we're going to set us all free by doing it. And the idea that in Britain we should have to show your papers was something that we were completely opposed to, and that was for a long time. And then you quite rightly say, what happens is there's a very significant push, and particularly from Tony Blair, which through a series of incarnations from around 2000, and some of it in response to what happened at 9/11 and what they called the War on Terror, which, obviously it was well-intentioned. It was well-intentioned by some people, but the problem is that it ended up being an assault on some of our democratic freedoms, there was attempts to kind of stymie everyone rather than go after the specific issue. There was lots of discussion. Why do they hate us? What's going on? Who are they? Who are we? But there was a blanket impact on democracy for everyone and freedom rather than a focused reaction. Now that led to Tony Blair and others really pushing the idea of having an ID scheme, which nearly came to fruition, but in 2010 ended up being stopped under the Cameron combined government, Lib Dem Conservative, at the cost of almost 20 billion, according to the LSE. So a lot of money was spent and it was pushed really hard. And then on every single issue that's come up, the solution from the Tony Blair Institute is set up by Tony Blair, but now has enormous power and reach and influence in governments all around the world.
It's insane.
Every single issue, the solution seems to be digital ID. We should remember that Larry Ellison from Oracle has given him an enormous amount of money, hundreds of millions. I mean, it's in the billions, actually, it looks like, but lots of money and investments. People that will be the beneficiaries, obviously, economically, financially, for a really huge digitized digital ID system. But it's not just money, because people often say, like, where's the money? Smell the money, see where the money goes. What this really comes down to is a view of people. There are people that since the Constitution and before, but like if you think about the debate around free speech, there are some people that think you can't give too much freedom to people. You can't give too much free speech. You can't give them all the right to vote. You can't really allow them all to have these. You can't even have them just to have their own representatives. You've got to have lords as well that you don't have elected, because you can't really trust the commoners. There's this whole fight that's continued, like with the Constitution and the First Amendment for free speech. It's constantly contested. Some people think, we should have hate speech laws. You shouldn't trust people to speak. If people hear things, they start going crazy. They do things. And then there's been the sense that you can trust the public. Now, within all of this, in the technocratic realm of the last 3 decades, right, where Tony Blair's ideas have reigned supreme, where like really open, fluid borders, and this idea that you basically survey everyone, and we've seen in Britain lots of CCTV cameras, but also lots of crime at the same time. And in fact, an inability to deal with burglaries and violent assaults, but yet people will come to your house for a social media post if you do something on an issue like trans, or they'll arrest you at an airport with 5 armed cops. But left, so if you say, if you're a comedian, but you can say whatever you want about all sorts of other things that involve murder and mutilation of people, and they you know, and they'll say, oh well, that's just that multiculturalism or whatever they might say. And so there's a very particular outlook of people that are running things. Now, Tony Blair has wanted to impose this on every single issue. And let's just explore it for a second. Most people obviously realize that digital ID is not going to stop any boats, right?
I think everybody knows that, yeah.
Yeah, they all know that. In Germany, in France, and Italy, they have a national ID scheme. It hasn't stopped any boats or people on the land. Then they say, well, it will do is stop fraud and crime. And then now what they've done is they've pivoted, because obviously it increases a lot of fraud and it increases a lot of crime, and even big billion, you know, multi-billion trillion-dollar tech companies can't stop breaches, hundreds of millions continually. So the idea that the government and others are going to stop those breaches is preposterous. But then you've got this idea that it's all going to be about health, and the health thing might be a bit more compelling for people, because you're like, well, you can't get a GP appointment if you're in a different part of the country. They can process this much quicker, and you can get to have your things seen. And that all sounds a bit appealing, right?
Yeah.
A bit appealing, like a bit like education, a bit appealing, until you start saying, well, where are the GPs? Where are the frontline resources? Why have we got such a sclerotic bureaucracy? What is happening with the actual hospitals? Why is it inefficient? Why is it ideological? Why are we dominated by certain things like ESG and DEI, rather than just delivering the care to the patient? And why can't we have a bit of a mixed economy like they have in Europe, by the way, and have that whole discussion? Because that's where we need to go, with an aging population and far more people here. But you see, all along, what they'll do is they'll present this kind of silver bullet. Digital ID will be the solution, without discussing the fact that this government, and most governments recently, this government in particular, has got no solution to dealing with the borders, right? You can deal with borders by dealing with the borders. Use the Navy, use the Army, use the public, use the law. Do what you need to do. Deal with the issue of housing or the economy or resources or education with policy, and commit to it, and be bold and courageous and win the public to it, and then execute it, right?
That's right.
Not digital ID. Digital ID is for people who want to be able to snoop and spy on the public. They want to be able to see what we're doing at every point. They want to see what transactions we're doing, where we're driving, who we're visiting, what we're saying on social media, what shops we go to. It's like a chronology, and we're data. And the data, are you the right kind of data? Are you the data that's saying the right kind of thing, that's the DEI or the woke or the ESG? Are you all about, or are you the wrong kind of data, right? Which means you may end up getting no more access to petrol, or to travel, or to come outside the 15-minute city or your low traffic neighborhood, or indeed to be on social media, or to be banking. Now, anyone who might think this is a bit dramatic and excessive, just remember.
There's a video. There's a video I have here I could play to you. Is this what you're referring to? His cut, I think cut 3. Is this what you're referring to? Let's play it. Let's hear it. Let me know if you can hear it.
Can I see your BRIC card, please?
I don't have one. I don't have a smartphone.
Can I get another pint, please?
Sorry, sir. Your BRIC card says you've exceeded your alcohol quota for this week.
Sorry, sir. Your BRIC card says you've already flown twice this year. We're having to restrict passengers with higher than average emissions profiles.
Sorry, I'm afraid your funds have been temporarily frozen. Your recent social media post did not align with the government's narrative.
Sorry, I'm afraid your BRIC card says you cannot purchase any more meat this week as part of our commitment to achieving net zero.
I've just logged in using my BRIC card, and it's saying I've already had 3 hours of internet today, and it's locked me out.
Is this what you're referring to?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great video. It's a great video. And people, but I want to...
How far are we from getting there?
Yeah, well, that's it. It's not even how far are we from getting there. Let's just look back at what's happened in the last few years. People have been debanked. People have been taken off banking platforms for their political views.
That's right.
That when you can't bank with someone, you can't operate in a society, in a free society. So people and organizations have been debanked. People have been taken off platforms We recently had a debate on assisted suicide bill, and YouTube took it down. We don't know why, but there, it's just you can't do it. It's off, and we've seen that people have been locked down, and it was allegedly all about follow the science, and yet then we like
you gotta tread careful there.
Yeah, it's mental, right? You like science is an inquiry, a means of inquiry, and yet they say follow the science as though it's a kind of deity, the science. And so we've seen that. We've had governments that shut down Parliament, prorogue Parliament. They've sent spy units out on us, like the Rapid Response Unit, the Counter Disinformation Unit.
That's right.
We've seen that they basically lied and gaslit us and nudged us with behavioral psychology units to try and psychologically convince us rather than politically win the arguments, and then shadow ban and censor and do much more. And we've seen all of this come out, right? And the COVID inquiry wasn't fit for purpose, but that's all happened. And we know that these things have happened already, right? And we know that the potential, and we know that people are being arrested and imprisoned for social media posts, some people. We know that when other people who also do posts that are similar and or worse don't get that treatment, right? There are countless examples. I could go into a couple now, but I'm sure your viewers are familiar with them. We know that if certain kinds of protesters protest, they get treated in one way and others get treated in others, right? You're allowed to say some things, but not others. And we have a two-tier approach to things. And if the people that are running society get us into a position where everyone is on facial recognition as potential criminals. This is the other thing. It was never in a manifesto. They're doing it around London in different cities. They're doing it across the UK. Facial recognition consistently, right? So the constant idea is monitor, survey, censor, track. The CEO of the Bank of International Settlement said, we want central bank digital currency because we want to be able to track every single transaction you make. Now, that sounds like a technocrat's great dream, right? A brilliant vision.
Yeah, of course.
For many people who want spontaneity, they want privacy, they don't want to be constantly surveyed and looked at and spied on. That's a big problem. And we know that the Department for Work and Pensions has now is looking to snoop into bank accounts, to be able to go into them, unelected officials and others. We know that we now see a push with, and this is one of the key parts of our campaign, for 8 million directors to be forced into digital ID. They think that if they get the directors on, the directors are going to get all the stuff. We're saying absolutely no way. We're not doing it. We're going to push very hard. In the same way, we're not accepting the idea that nursery and children will be put onto a digital ID scheme under the auspices, a reasonable auspice to do a check on which kids are at school and which are not. Who's being homeschooled, who's not. Another collateral damage of lockdown, where a lot of kids now are not at school because they were like, hey, well, school, it don't matter too much. And then all of a sudden, lo and behold, there's not a lot of kids at school. A lot of them are missing. But we're not going to allow all that to be used as another backdoor mechanism to get everyone on digital ID. And there may well be lots of people on the NHS app, but that's because they want to get a GP appointment, which generally they can't. And the one login system, and this is really central, the one login system that the government uses is so leaky. It's had so many data breaches. And I could give you a list now, but I mean, obviously we could post afterwards and we can show at the site. There are so many examples. 125 Americans just in the last year with data breaches. We know in Britain, 2 weeks ago, Heathrow planes were grounded. We know that Marks and Spencer's had a breach. We know that Afghanistan personnel
everybody's getting breached.
Breach. No privacy. Ardar leaks like a sieve. That's for 1.4 billion people in India. We know that even in Estonia, where they say this is the gold standard in Estonia, they've had a huge breach. The whole thing is a scam. And it's unacceptable. And we've got, what we're saying it together is this: we're for technology. We think that in some instances it's really important, like if there are things that can be done with your doctor interpersonally and things like that, technology is really important. But we need to make sure that you're allowed to not be part of it. You've got to have a choice not to do it. That's the first fundamental point. And then that we've got protections ring fenced around things, like if people are going to look at your mail or come to your house, there needs to be a warrant. That we've got very clear understanding about procedures and protections. But the main point is, like we campaign to keep cash, and we've got hundreds of thousands of people to lobby the Bank of England and the Financial Control Authority. We campaign to keep banks, local banks, and cash. And we're going to, and the idea being that people want to be able to use cash and to not have to be on just a digital system. Millions of older people do that anyway, but it's not just older people. There's a whole array of people for various reasons and just don't want to have to do something, and that should be entirely reasonable in a free society, and we have to maintain it. And the big concerns around coercion, control, surveillance are ones that so many people are opposed. So we'd encourage, you've got it up on the screen now, but yeah, to get everyone to sign our petition. It's actually an open letter to say the company directors are not going to do this. We're sending letters to everybody, you know, the Small Business Federation, the CBI, Companies House in particular, accountants. We're making sure everyone's clear. They're not going to coerce us and force us into this. And just so everyone knows, right? We made a decision, a lot of people together, that they weren't going to turn our country into a Checkpoint Charlie society. And we're not going away. And we got organized through this. So in case they think we're going to roll over and just go along with it, they're mad. And so everyone should take confidence in the fact there's a lot of people who are willing to stand together and say no. And in the end, these weak authoritarians, they're weak authoritarians, right? They'll say things and they'll try, but then when they come up against, it's a bit like a bully, but then when they come up against something, then they'll back down and they won't do it. And we can win this and make sure we've got the provisions we need in there.
Yeah, so they're like very sneaky with it. They want to do it, but they don't want you to know that they want to do it. So they're like, it's like Calameo, like, I don't know, chameleon, where they're stepping. They don't want you to see, but they're stepping close. As soon as you blink, they're going to put it. That's what we've seen with Tony Blair. That's how almost every single thing he does. Tony Blair, Bill Gates, and all these technocrat machines. Well, they look like machines. They talk like machines, right? So they're always trying to push something. And next minute, they get through. And these guys are unelected. Like Tony Blair has been crying for digital ID before getting in government, after being in government, well, while in government, after being in government, and it still is till today. And somehow they come out victorious unless the people stand up, and which we're seeing right now, and it's freaking lovely to see. Now, it gets a bit dangerous, especially when you talk about debanking and taking people off and doing all this. Right now, they're able to do it because they got a system where they have to work hard to see who's doing what. But if they get a digital ID, it's just there. They can just tick, you're done. They can just tick, you're debanked. They can just tick, you somehow can't do the things that you love doing. That's how easy it will be for them. I mean, what have you seen on the ground so far? Since you're leading the march, you're out there on the ground speaking to people and all these sort of thing. What is the most concerned thing that a lot of people are telling you that they're concerned about? Because I'm sure because if you just imagine what they could do with it, the amount of power that they will have in their hands, I'm sure there's a lot of people who are raising a lot of concerns. What has that been?
There's everything, right? If you look at Southport and the response to Southport, what the Prime Minister at the time said in the Home Office, even though they knew certain things, they said, this is a very particular thing, and all the protesters and thuggery and far right, and they said, we're going to have banning orders. They called people criminals before they were convicted. And that was the Home Office. They put that out. And then the Prime Minister said people would be on remand before they'd been convicted. Wow. It's a very different reaction and response to other protests that have been going on for the last couple of years in Britain, and also to the response to the Manchester synagogue attack, where the Prime Minister called him a vile individual, which I'm sure he is, but didn't want to address the fundamental issue about why that vile individual decided to do that attack, and the question of radical jihadism in Britain.
That's right.
They
don't want to call it.
Yeah, and so yet that he's very willing to call lots of people, the majority of at Labour Party conference, they called the majority of the British public racist. Yeah, and they didn't want to. They want to stop inciting racial violence or racial hatred, but they're there inciting racial hatred. So it's this irony. So these things are going on. We've seen that people are fined for not recycling the right things at their local councils with this net zero obsession. We've seen that people are constantly getting driving tickets, we're getting monitored, we're getting roads shut off, not being able to move around. We're seeing that the question of your carbon footprint is always there. The question of what kind of food you eat, the question of should you be treated in the health system if you have drunk or made other choices, smoked or others. I mean, people can have all sorts of views about this, and we can have a big democratic discussion.
Yeah,
but the idea about someone just switching something on or off, or saying you can't do that, you haven't fit this criteria, or you haven't done enough units, or you're not the right kind of citizen, is a real problem. And we've seen, this is the point about how people have been treated already. Banning orders, speech orders, a question of like, are we going to have an Islamophobia rule? Because you're not allowed to ask questions about something, but you're allowed to call people all sorts of other things in Britain, right? So you've got this situation. Now, the idea then you have a centralized digital ID system where you can, at a click of a button, see what everyone's doing all the time. And we're basically walking QR codes with lots of data information, is just something that no one has said that they would do in any manifesto. No one has agreed to. No one's asked for. And actually, I think that, the good thing about all of this is we are going to push this back. We're going to make sure that this does not come to fruition in the way they want it to. The question is then, there's always let's use an analogy, like this, you fight a war, but then you fight the peace. How do you make that like peace settlement with what is done in this new arena? But we've seen so much with technology, big technology companies. We've seen like Meta and others admit what they did during lockdown, the pressure they came under from the security services. And we just need to be clear democratically. There might be very good reasons why sometimes the security services will say certain things, but not to treat the whole of the public as though we're all terrorists, right?
Exactly.
If you want to treat terrorists as though they're terrorists, they need to do that, but not treat the whole public like we're terrorists. And we need to get to grips with this and handle it properly, and no longer just gaslight and smear people and call people names who have got genuine concerns about the direction of our country. And so for all these reasons, we're going to keep fighting. And we've got these open letter. We'd like people to sign it, and your viewers. We also have a number of events coming up where I'm going to be speaking actually with the architects of this, the BRIC card, Labour Together. I'm going to have an open debate with them at the Battle of Ideas on Sunday, the 19th of October in the morning. That's
pretty cool. Is that happening?
Church. That's at Church House in Westminster. And that's at the Battle of Ideas. That's going to be good. And we have a big event in London that everyone should try and come to on November the 16th. That's a Sunday in London, November the 16th. We've got great 16th. Yeah, so it would be something. And there you get to see a bit more of some of the people that we organise with and what we're doing ongoing as a kind of like national, because we have events around the country. Yeah, that's the one on that's it, with Morgan Wild. He's the head of policy at Labour Together. And I'm really pleased they're debating us, because a lot of times people don't get to thrash out things openly, civilly. I thoroughly disagree with their views, but I'm really pleased we're going to be able to discuss it. And in the spirit of Charlie Kirk, I will just say, right, lots of people all round, understandably, right, are very emotional. I don't know how you could be emotional about it, but our response must not be to suffocate the ability to speak to one another and go after others and shut them down from speaking, right? If they're legally speaking freely, even if we hate what they're saying, we must hear it. We must be able to challenge it and attempt to interrogate those ideas and win other members of the public over to our view.
Exactly. That's the whole point of it. So to every single one of you who has walked this road with us, not just the easy win, but the tough, heavy storm, I want to reach out my hand to you, sir, and say thank you so much. Thank you so much, missus, because you didn't just fund a platform. You didn't just support creator. You stood for something sacred, something real. The idea that truth should never be owned by the politicians, by the elites. So thank you so much. Because we're living in a world where headlines are shaped by propagandists. We're living in a world where narratives are created by a politician's agenda. So staying true and telling you the honest truth isn't just hard anymore. It's becoming radical. And we've never taken a penny from any corporation or political party, because we understand that journalism should never be funded by the elites, should never be funded by politicians. Journalists should only be accountable to the people they serve, not the people that they meant to question. But staying independent comes with a lot of cost. It means no more access, no access to fancy meetings, no access to big donors. So we're choosing integrity, we're choosing morals, and we're choosing to put stories in front. And trust me, that's a cost I'm willing to take. That's why we need you, not just as donors, but as people, as defender of truth, as people that believe that truth isn't a luxury, it's a right. It's a right that every single person in a country deserves to get. And if you've been watching the mainstream media lately, I'm sure you've felt a quiet rage when you see a story being told in a different way, when you see the truth being twisted, when you see suffering being ignored, when you see the powerful few rewrite history and take over narrative and rewrite reality. And now this is the moment that stops. Every single contribution that you make to this channel is a refusal to be manipulated. It's a stand against distortion. And if you believe that journalism should be factual, if you believe that journalism should be unbiased, then this is your time for you to stand with us. Donate right now and build this movement with us. Be the reason why the truth survives in this country. Thank you so much. Because I see a lot of people. I was speaking to a member of staff, right? One of my team member here. And she was saying, you see, one thing I hate or one thing I don't like seeing on the right or maybe on the left is because when they go to talk to each other, they go to win. The whole point of debate is not to win, is to understand each other and to try come to an agreement into some cases and try to convert each other in peacefully, with just talking. And now you get, that's why I'm really like the fact that the guy is accepting to come talk to you. That is really good, because that's another way of saying, hey, all right, I already disagree with you, but hey, I'm sure there's something we can agree with. Let's go and
we
find
might not even agree, and this is an important point, but we can do it civilly.
Yeah.
And really, they've got I think they have a duty and responsibility to defend their arguments. I mean, they've written a policy.
It's a big push.
They've written a policy document. They're promoting the idea of a brick card to the Labour government. They're very close, Labour together and the Labour Party, but they are distinct. But they're a think tank, but they have a big influence on them, like some other think tanks around the Conservative Party and others, right? So I think they have a duty to do that, and we all have and should have the ability to scrutinise and discuss it. Is really important. We might not agree, and it's the most. You said a really important thing. It's really what civilization is, to be able to discuss in a like with fellow humans and disagree about maybe fundamental ideas and not like kill each other or fight, but actually work out. And also tolerance, which is part of the Enlightenment as well, which is that you could be very critical, but also you would tolerate ideas. You might hate them, you might ridicule them, you could really be rough on them, but in a society we have to tolerate all sorts of things, and that means that we can argue and criticize and win over, but we don't do the things that we may have done in previous incarnations of how we lived, right? So that's how we work in a civilized way. And
yeah, it's like a game. I mean, this whole living and doing all this thing, it's like a game. When you're playing a game, when you see a rugby game, they're all rough at each other. They're going out there to break each other's shoulders. But at the end of the game, they happen to shake hands and hugs, and that's how sportsmanship really do. Like, I think we need that kind of a sportsmanship in this political arena, because as you say, we should not try to go and be like, I'm going to take him out. He said something I didn't agree. That's not the way to go, because if that's the way to go, then, man, yeah, it's going to be blood everywhere. Hope not. But that's not the way to go. But I want to bring this in. Not many people are talking about this. There's a big company out there. This company it's been emerging for a very long time. Nobody knew about this company. the Iraq war happened. They went into war. They needed some guy to come do some data managing and stuff. The guy went out there. The company took went on the rise, and it kept on rising, kept on rising. Now it's at the level where this company wants to do everything. This company wants to manage anything to do with numbers, anything to do with war, anything that company wants to be in. It goes by the name of Palantir Technology. I mean, have you heard of that company, Alan?
Yeah. So
Top.
I mean, it's an interesting one. I mean, Palantir, yeah, and they're very involved in the NHS. They're very involved in the tracking systems for
Insane.
lockdown. They were involved in also doing stuff for the CIA. As it happens, one of the founders, Peter Thiel, I quite like some of the things he's done, and I like some of his political views. I think the thing is always is that what is something being used for and by who? Because in and of itself, any technology is inanimate. It's not, it's the way that it's being used. You could utilize any bit of technology to tremendous benefit for humanity, and you can use it to really limit and suffocate. And that's about the choices. They're political questions.
That's right.
So you could make a very good argument for some of the benefits in terms of security protections, right? And I think, you know, but at the same time, it's the question is political, is who is the threat, and being honest about who the threat is and what that means and how we organize ourselves and our resources around that. And the concern is that we have an ever spreading, ever more amorphous few big tech companies that are like hand in glove with the government, and there's that pressure. But I will say that if you look at particularly with what happened with Elon Musk and then the purchase of Twitter and some of the things that came out from then, the reaction in Silicon Valley and all of that has now been different. That's and right. Actually, the head of Palantir in the UK said they're not going to do this. They're not going to implement the digital ID because it has not been agreed at the ballot box, and it's just a force and an imposition. That's what he said, the CEO, recently, a few days ago on a podcast. So he was interviewed. So I thought that was encouraging. Who knows? But I think that's a very bold statement. You very rarely getting a CEO of a company that can make millions or billions from something, making a statement like that. That is an enormous consequence to.
But we never voted them to be in, you know, the contract with NHS and stuff. Yeah. Them managing our data.
Well, yes,
I mean,
that's true.
We never voted for that as well. I'm sure.
Well, you see, so the thing is, you could make the argument that's true. We didn't vote for that specifically, although the question about the choice, there was a choice. There was no forcing of people. So you could say there was coercion to get people onto an app through the way they did things. But there was a discussion, right? Lots of people have not done it. Some, you know, there's a certain amount of people that have done it, and they've done it for particular reasons. But I think the point he was making is that we're being told that everybody would have to be on this digital ID. And if they're not going to be able to work. They're not going to be able to rent. They're not going to be able to do also. And they're like, well, hold on a minute. You're going to use our services to do that. We can't be. So that's the point they made. And I think that's significant. I'm not going to be all Pollyanna-ish about it. We still need to keep fighting. We still need to keep making our voices heard. But I'm just saying, right, that when people think they can just go and do things, also the unexpected gets thrown up.
That's right.
And that's a positive.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, I don't think Labour expected the opposition that it's gained. No. You had the Conservatives, you had Reform, you had almost every single party that's not in government right now. All the parties, literally going against it.
And some of their own backbenchers, and some of the people that are quite significant in Labour, and some of the new people who've left Labour and they've got their own independent organisations that have some of the Labour supporters. So you've got a whole array of people who are opposed to it, and their response to the 3 million actual government petition to debate it, everything is we're going to do it anyway. But you see, they can talk tough as much as they want, right?
But how? Now the question is, how important or how strong is the backlash? That's what the question really is, because a lot of people went out there, signed petition, 2-point-something million people within a couple, I think 3-4 days. That's huge. That's big. Then the government responded to it and said, we're still gonna do it. How do you respond to that? That's like these guys were voted in. They didn't say they were going to do this. They were voted in. Now they're in. They said, all right, we're going to do what we want. Now the people are like, no, don't do that. We don't want that. We didn't vote for that. And then government comes out and said, we're going to do it anyway. Like, what?
So they will say, well, we got more votes than the petition. If they had to say, they don't want to have this conversation, but they'll say that. Now we know they got a very small proportion of people, but nevertheless they're in with a large number of people in the House. I think the thing is that they can say what they want. Even the proposal at Labour Together for Brit Card says that 2027, it's a couple of years. It has to go to Parliament. It has to go to the House of Lords. I'm not even sure they're going to be in power in 2027. We might even have an election by then, and we might do it beyond. But the important thing is, so unless they do something that's really insane, even more insane than this, and try and do some emergency legislation and just impose it, at which point I think they will really be in serious deep water with the British public. I mean, I just cannot see them trying to do that, or even, and that will not run with the British public. People will not just be the calm British, like, resolute thing. I think that will have a really big reaction if they try and do emergency legislation to impose on people, which people are just not going to do it. But this is all a push to see what they can get as well. Right. So what they're going to try and do is get what they can, right? And they're like, keep a little few caveats, and we'll get them pushed in this direction. The directors get the directors, and they get, and over time, and I think the thing is, it's important for everyone to realize that we can win this if we stay determined. Nothing's inevitable. We should get control over the direction of it. What we do allow, data, privacy, what we do allow people to see about us and our choices and our decisions, and what we don't allow, how we manage that. How much the state should be given sanction over anything that we do, and also be very clear about what we expect from the state. The state should be there to defend the borders and to run, to a certain extent, the important institutions and the economy, and to step out the way of everything else, right? That's right. And it's not, and not be heavily intruding on our private lives and constantly facially scanning us. Deal with crime. Don't turn everyone into a potential criminal and a barcode.
Exactly.
These things are very fundamental, and I think we can win all of these things.
We have to. But if digital ID was to be implemented right now, what do you fear the most?
Well, all the things you talked about, but I think, look, the idea that you have to just participate in any kind of ID system, but a digital ID system to participate in society is a problem. When I used to go to New York when they had the digital IDs, originally they didn't have any, and when we were doing open for all, and then they ended up doing it, and I wouldn't go into any of the bars or clubs or meet, but I said, you have to come out and meet me here. I'm not coming into them. But obviously, if everywhere were to have those things, then you don't get to participate in society. It's why it's so fundamental, right? From getting on the tube to going into the workplace, to renting a place, to having a job, to going everywhere, right? All those things, retail, leisure, hospitality, travel. So that's not something that we're prepared to go along with. And it has to have options to not participate. We have to have analog options. We've already got a passport, driving license, and social security number. There's no requirement for this. And certainly not in the way that it's being attempted to be foisted upon us. So we'd encourage everyone to get involved, to togetherdeclaration.org, to become a member, because that's how we keep going. Actually, right. People, where do you get your money from? Well, we don't have big donors. We do it from people who believe in these freedom and privacy issues that become members of us. We can keep campaigning and keep organizing rallies and protests and meetings up and down the country, and having our voices heard at Westminster, but across the board. It's not just about lobbying Westminster and Parliament and councillors. It's also about having boots on the ground in different parts of the country and getting the public strong together. So we'd encourage anyone who's interested to be involved. And it's the fight of our lives.
No, yeah. If it's implemented, the fear is just, I think a lot of people it'll be miserable for a lot of people. The future will not look bright. It will not look bright. Like what you just mentioned there. If we go back during COVID time, there was so many restrictions, and these were like mobile restrictions. Police will catch you. Police will see, and they'll stop you because you're not wearing a mask. Now it will be more. They don't have to come to see what you're doing. They can just stop you before you even think of doing it. Because if they have all these systems, all these cameras everywhere, and they have all these things on they're able to see where you are, they're able to see what you're scanning on. They got digital ID, digital bank, and all these things. They can just stop your bank anytime. So they don't have to knock on your door anymore. They will just stop it, like, done. You can't do anything. So the future would not look bright. You're right. The one thing to fear the most is just it being implemented, because everything else is just hell after that. You are right. So now, for you to do what you do, you need a lot of backing. And obviously, you just said you're not backed by big donors, by, you know, it's just regular folks who drop a $5 or drop a $10 or just share a tweet. That's how I believe you've been able to get yourself to where you are and get the organization to where it is today. And I have to say, it's been successful, and, you know, keep on going. But in the political sense, we got obviously you know, Reform UK. I usually just say Nigel Farage, but okay, we got Reform UK. We got Better Beeb. We got all these guys on the right that's emerging. We got the Conservative. We got Labour and all these people. Now, let me give you a little bit before asking you this question. When you think of the example of this Online Safety Act, before it come in, the Conservative prep it up. The Conservatives are the ones who came up with it, draw it down and write it up and down, and then the Labour Party came in and like said, hey, we're going to do it. Cool. Now, we are fighting digital ID. It's not the Labour Party's first idea, but it's been around, it's been lurking around, but Labour Party wants to put it through. Do you think the next party that will come in would push it? And if so, why? Because when the Child Safety Act, this Online Safety Act, was pushed by the Conservative, people like yourself, I believe, influencers, and even the Labour Party, they objected. And that's what we're seeing from the people who are not in, from the parties who are not in, and individuals who are not in. But what we also see is that the same people who oppose it will always come in and push it through. Do you think that's what we're going to see with this digital ID?
Well, I think the thing is, that's why it's important to hold people accountable and be very explicit and say, what are you putting in your manifesto, and then hold them accountable to it. But I think the Online Safety Act, obviously it was motivated around some things, and one of the key things is about protection of children. But the problem with all of that is it ends up meaning that we'd all end up having to have biometric proof
children,
to sign on to the internet. Now, there are ways of making sure, practical ways that we can make sure that children are protected. Obviously, parenting is one thing, and what we do with access to the internet on phones and other things and devices. There are software and hardware options that are in place that could be used, and there is just parenting, right? And obviously some kids don't have parents, but there's the way that you do that. We have rules and laws about off licenses and alcohol and smoking and things like that, about who can harness and access what at what point, and we can have that done, but not in a way that limits and treats all citizens as children. And then also the problem with the Online Safety Act is that around free speech, it's been weaponized as well. So as well as the sort of Orwellian non-crime hate incidents that we've seen, 13,000 arrests last year, we've seen scores of people arrested each month for non-crime hate incidents. It's just outrageous. Insane. You know, must end. But the Online Safety Act is another one of those areas where that speech is weaponized and what you can say and can't say around that. And so it needs to be repealed. And there are parties that are saying it should be repealed. And, you know, Reform is saying it needs to be repealed. I believe Advance are. I think the thing is that it is true that it's easy to say something when you're in opposition. And your point is, are they going to do it when they're... Well, I think that in the context of what's happening now and the fury of the public and the fact that this isn't just happened, it's really, there's things that have happened around Brexit and before and lockdowns and subsequently that a lot of people in Britain are very annoyed and frustrated about. So, for instance, Reform, who've been involved in all of that in one form or another for quite some time, understand that and know that, and a whole lot of new people that have never, they have won people from Labour and Conservatives, but there's a whole load of new people that have never been involved in politics that have joined. I mean, 250,000 members. There's like in some councils up to 45, 50 councillors that have gone in. If you look in Stafford and places like that. So there's a whole new group of people that have not been involved in politics. So I think that there's a commitment, but they're new. There's a freshness. You've got to learn some things. All these things are true at the same time. It's an exciting time in politics. It's also daunting. And the establishment and the institutions and the way they've been done, they're not going to give up some of this stuff. The civil service in particular, they're going to stranglehold and try and retain their influence and their power, which is very undemocratic. And this fight's going to continue. And that can only be won when you've got a mandate from the public, when you've got a strong public behind you. And then you always check that with the public, right? So the way that you can be really strong, not to be a weak authoritarian, always trying to pass new laws rather than uphold the laws you've got, always trying to survey and scrutinize people. The way you can be really in authority, but not authoritarian, is that you present it to the public, you win them to it, and then they back you. And then you can implement and execute everything because you've won the public to it democratically. And that is a bit like when we saw President Trump, whatever anyone thinks about him, good or bad, in his first signing off of all the points in his second presidency, because he had the support of the public and a huge mandate. And that's the thing, right? You can do that if you've got that. And that's what we need to do. We need to insist on holding people accountable, having them state unequivocally where they stand, make sure we get to impress upon them the things we think are important, and shape the landscape. And listen, I can tell you that all these new groups and parties and people and everything, all of that, everybody is part of shaping and curating this, right? That's right. So all this whole thing that's happening, what they call populism, the demos, the public, and the public's ahead of most people. I think that's really exciting.
That's right. That's right. I want to show you a video which kind of demonstrate what we're seeing right now. I'll show you this video. It's very I think I've been watching this video. I've played this video to almost all the streams I've done the past 2 weeks, I think. Let me know what you notice in this video. All right. Let me see. Cut to.
There was that ant that stood up to me.
Yeah, but we can forget about him.
Yeah, it was just one ant. One ant.
Yeah, you're right. It's just one ant.
Yeah, boss. They're puny.
Puny? Say, let's pretend this grain is a puny little ant. Did that hurt?
Nope.
Well, how about this one?
Are you kidding?
Well, how about this? You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life.
There was that.
What do you understand from that?
Well, I'm reminded of Shelley's "Ye are many, they are few." And I think that's the great thing about democracy and freedom and the modern enlightened period, that the power's in our hands, and it's up to us to curate it, but we have a responsibility to do so. And what happened up until fairly recently is people were often complaining and saying it's always going to be the same, or there's just a big plan, or there's nothing you can do. And that's all been whipped up now. People still say that, but a lot more people are like, no, this is what we want to see happen. Go do it, get it changed. And so it's up to us. It's up to us. We are the many. The public has always been the thing that has kept. It's the public that will keep people honest, right? It's the public that will keep elected representatives and institutions and organizations. It's up to us to flex our democratic muscles and do that together to make sure that we retain those fundamental values and principles.
Yeah, basically, we are the little ants, right? And I'm sure in case Dama is sitting there and all the people who we never see, who we don't know, I'm sure there's a lot of people who are involved that we don't know of. When they're sitting there, they're probably thinking, oh, so many of them have been waking up. Fuck. Man, if all of them get together, there goes our way of life. We can't implement what we want anymore. So I'm sure when they see individuals like yourself, and obviously there's a lot of other individuals, I agree with them or disagree, but they are also pivoting and putting a lot of pressure on the government to to put their feet on their fire and keep doing what the people want rather than going on their own ways and trying to implement something like digital ID, which is a big problem. Now, there's a lot of things planned for you, for yourself, for your company, I wouldn't say your company, but I feel like it's everybody's company because it's together, right?
It's an association, yeah. It's an association for everyone. Exactly right.
Yeah, it feels like it is for everybody because when I'm over there, when I'm seeing the reporting, I see your work as like you're working for me and all the people in the country. So yeah. Could you tell us what's the plan with the institution together? What we gonna see next? Is anything going to happen in Manchester? Hey, get me involved. Come on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. We love Manchester, and we do.
Oh, you do? Thank you.
Yeah, we do things in Leeds and I think we've got a few events coming up in Wales and I think in Newcastle and Scotland, and then some more in the southeast and southwest. We try and keep moving them around the country in different places, as well as our one on November the 16th in London. But our goal is to really, this is it. This is the hill now with digital ID to push back, to keep us like getting more and more people involved. We want more of the public to be involved. So we invite you to encourage your friends, neighbours, work colleagues to have discussions. Come to togetherdeclaration.org, sign up with us, become a member, get some flyers, get some leaflets, contact us, get involved in marches and protests and debates and discussions. We really are going to do calls to action to put pressure on all the organisations, on Companies House and the government and all the trade associations and the accountants, and say, look, we're not going to accept this for directors and or for anyone else to be forced and win this. We're going to win this resolutely with everyone, right? This is the fight that we now all need to do. And we have over the next period, we've got, after our event, we've got the May elections for councillors, and that involves London as well, but around the country, there'll be campaigning around that and saying people will be voted on the basis of their position on this. And this is going to be front and center for everything we do over the next period.
Yeah. And I have to say, I appreciate you for what you're doing, because I know putting your face on this is very dangerous in today's time. I'm sure there's a lot of unlawful stuff, unlawful attacks that might come on your way, or maybe have been coming on your way. Have you experienced, I'm sure, maybe debanking or maybe some random warning from somebody who you've never seen before? Tell me more about that, because I'm sure there's something more like that. Like, because you don't shake the institution without being attacked. Go on.
We've had our own experience of debanking, and that's why we were very passionate about it, and we got involved with putting these together. There are various people that say things on social media. Look, we luckily though, I think many people are very supportive, but there are some things that people get very emotional about, and unfortunately we've seen that some people equate words with violence. And I just want to say this: it's important that everyone keeps a cool head. Like, I come from a place where there are things that you can solve, right? And we talked about civilization and the importance of being human and being able to engage with one another of different views. It's essential, because if it descends into barbarism, that is going to be a disaster for everyone. So people need to think very carefully about any kind of changing things from speaking civilly as fellow citizens to violence. That is a road we do not want to go down in Britain or anywhere else. We've seen what happens, and it's no joke, right? It's no joke when those things happen, and we need to treat very seriously when people do that, and we need to deal with it very seriously. We've seen, attacks on MPs very brutally. We've seen, obviously, Manchester. We see what happens in this country, right? People want to talk about other countries all the time, but in this country, and it's unacceptable. So the thing is, look, right, this is our country. It's not their country. It's not the people that are trying to do these things any more than anyone. This is all of ours, right? And the people who should decide are the majority. And if the majority decide they disagree with me, that's tough. It's tough on me. But if the majority get a voice and are properly engaged with, and we say we don't want what they want and we want it, then they're the ones. And that's what the point about the ants thing that you just showed. And we are the many. And I think that we hold the room, right, in Britain. I think that the public want certain things and don't want others, and I'm prepared to argue it, and I'm not going to be silenced by people or whatever. But yeah, some of the things that have happened recently have been very, very concerning, and they're very problematic. And just like when people try and cancel people and shut them down, and then they're all bent out of shape, understandably, when they get cancelled themselves, right? And I think it's a problem just trying to like silence and shut down protests to make people feel better. I think it's a problem. I disagree with it. I believe from free speech, everyone. But in the same way, you start throwing punches at people when not talking, you got to expect that that's going to descend, and that may not stop descending. And so we have to be, conscious. We have to take ourselves seriously, and we have to hold the line with people. But I'm not going to be terrified or terrorized into not speaking, not by people who worship at the altar of Davos, these technocrats, and not by others who hate our way of life, whoever they are, right? I'm not going to be silenced in Britain, that is like the homeland and one of the heartbeating points of the Enlightenment and freedom.
That's right.
I'm not going to be silenced on that.
Yeah. Quick, maybe the next 10 minutes before we wrap up. Now, we got Kemi Badenoch hanging on this string, trying to keep her party still alive, where multiple of MPs are jumping off the ship, multiple of people are jumping off the ship, and she's trying to steer it, making sure she doesn't hit the ice. But it seems like she's hitting the ice very soon, and soon we might get another Titanic in a political sense. Well, so who are you backing? I've not seen anything from you. Who? Reform, Conservative, which one are you going with?
You asking me personally?
That's right, yes.
Well, I'm definitely not backing the Conservatives after what they did over this last period. They deserved the drudging that they got. And I think that this is an exciting time for politics and everything that's fresh and new and possibilities for a long time. For so long, they said, you can't beat the two-party system. It's all we'll ever have. And now there's something new and exciting there. So I think it's really encouraging and exciting what's been happening with reform. And I know that many viewers have views about some different individuals and all the things that have happened. But I think it's a really exciting moment for Britain that new things can come out of this. And I want to see the things I really think have been problematic in Britain, the role of civil servants unchecked, the things that have been going on in education with our children pushed back and stopped, the porous, floody, leaky border, but also what we go on to discuss about in terms of legal migration and the economy. I want people to be paid much better, but I want companies to make profits, but I also want less of a state. But I want to see how we have a regeneration across all our towns and cities with house building and shipping and tech and biomedicine across the board, right? I'd love to see loads of things. And I think that we've got some exciting prospects, energy harnessing, becoming energy independent, food independence with our farmers and having policies. And my focus at the moment is putting those arguments to people and saying, this is what needs to happen. And I really, I think it's really exciting what's happening with Reform. We were at the Reform Party conference. We had an event there. We spoke there. We had tractors there and farmers. But, with the farmers, we did things at various conferences, right? And we've done rallies. I definitely think it's exciting what's happening. And look, other people are standing and there's other parties. And obviously Benabib is doing what he's doing with Advance. Yeah. Rupert's doing what he's doing with his project, which is Restore Britain. So there's different things that are going on. And obviously people like Jeremy Corbyn and others are setting up their own party as well, right? So all of this is happening in Britain. It's good in the sense that people are clear now about where people stand. People have to decide. And I want to see things being pushed back to a smart, sensible, common sense, value-based, proud of Britain, dynamic economy, keep control of things. And that's what I'd like to see happen. So
So when it comes to, because obviously if you're keeping basically the conservative it's not on your list. It's not. So then you have Reform, and you got Ben Habib doing his stuff with Advance UK. A lot of people on the right, so not a lot of people, I would say. I think maybe I would say my algorithm has been pushing a lot of Ben Habib. Ben Habib this, Ben Habib that. Hold on, is that my camera gone?
Yeah.
Let me quickly fix it. So Ben Habib this, Ben Habib that. And people are thinking, okay, maybe Ben Habib. But when we see who has been built, who can stand, it looks like it's Nigel Farage with Reform UK. I mean, what's your message to those people? Do you think them voting Ben Habib would split the right? Because obviously it's already splitting with Reform taking some from Conservative. We don't want to split it again with Ben Habib, do we? I mean, what's your take on that?
I think it's very exciting that there's new things happening, and I think it's important that people lay their cards on the table politically, and they make the arguments, and people go with what they think are the most compelling arguments and what they want to do. I have my own personal views, and I might make them much more explicit down the road. But I happen to know all of the individuals, and I get on well with them, and I respect them. And I think this is an interesting thing that's happening, because each thing has an influence on one another in terms of the arena. But there's no denying that Reform is not just from the last year or two, because really it's been from its inception with the whole discussion of independence from the EU for many, many years, right? And that's come through in different incarnations, and the whole discussions around Brexit and then Reform. But so that's kind of taken a long period. But there's also the collapse, I would say the exhaustion of the old parties, the old political parties in Britain, and what that means to the public. And I'm very, very committed to the idea that the public are engaged. They make decisions based on what they think were the really crucial principles and values. What we've done up until now together is we've said who most represents these key points that we are campaigning around, right? And put that to the people who are either standing as councillors or MPs, and then vote for the ones that most encapsulate that. That's what we've done up until now. And we'll see where things go from here. It's a very exciting period. Lots of people I know are standing and being involved in politics in different areas of it, and campaigning. And I think that's really essential for the lifeblood of Britain. And what we really want it together. And we've got people that come from different political parties and different traditions and none. And I want people to be campaigning around these issues. I want people to be holding people accountable, and I'd encourage people to get involved and go the whole way. And I often say, if people that are running things can't do it, get out the way and let people who want to do it. And then,
that's right.
But at the moment, our main message is that we want to stop digital ID in the way it is. We want to make sure we uphold free speech, and we encourage everyone to get involved together.
Do you think Reform UK is the one for that?
I know you want to get an answer out of me. Right?
No, because
I understand that's what you want to do. I think the thing is that
I've not. Yeah. Nobody knows where I vote. I never really tell people where I vote.
But they're good questions. But the thing is, I think you can only obviously you can only go by what people say. If they put something in a manifesto and they argue for something, and you see what Reform has said that they're opposed to digital ID. They came on our stage and said that they did not want it, and that it's not. So they've made their case clear about that. So I believe that that's what they're saying. And the thing is about free speech. I'm a free speech absolutist, right? So there are very few people who agree with me, because what you'll find, right, is that people that like your views will be free speech until people they don't like.
That's
right. And then they start saying, arrest them or shut them down.
Yeah, so okay, that's a good take.
Well, I'm not like that, right? So that often what ends up happening is you end up being in a position where lots of people are not very happy with you, because they're like, how can you say those people should be able to speak? But that's my view, and I make the argument, and together that's our view, that we all need to have and that's something different to people who are actively trying to organize physical attacks on the state or something, right? I just want to make that clear. That's a different thing. Free speech about ideas and how to organize politically is a different thing. So That's where I stand on it.
So
And
with that being, sorry to cut you short there. It's just like, because you just mentioned that, I want to bring in the Gary Neville situation, because that's what we are here, where obviously the people on the right happen to be maybe in favor of cancel culture as well. That's where we are now. I get it. I didn't like the idea of taking the British flag down. My flag has always been up since we started this channel. It's always gonna remain there. We're planning. We got the biggest one. We got one big one, but it doesn't look good on the camera because the camera reflects, the light reflects of it. So we're trying to find something that you won't reflect back, where we're gonna put like big flag. But my flag always remain up there. If I was to have Gary Neville, I'll make sure there's a lot of flag in the house. But he put a flag down, and he obviously took an attack to the white middle-aged men on why the situation in Manchester and all this thing. Now, the people on the right are always the ones opposing cancel culture. They're always the ones saying, hey, we should not involve ourselves into canceling people. We should obviously like have this sort of debates and call it out when it's wrong, but never cancel somebody. But today, there's a lot of posts where people are saying, hey, Sky News should fire him, this and that. What do you think? If you are super free speech absolutist, what do you think should happen to him? Should we get him cancelled because he said something we disagree with about his own company?
I think I despise his attack that's so transparent. I think the public response to it is good. I mean, people can see that, and he's very wrong on it. Obviously, as an individual, he should be free to say whatever he wants. Of course he should. I think it's interesting the different reactions that Sky and others, BBC and others, will take to certain people with these views and others. I don't want to see people, and Sky is obviously different to the BBC, you see, because if we saw that thing with Gary Lineker, it's different because the BBC is state funded and the public taxpayer funded, and Sky is a commercial entity. So they'll make their own decisions. It will be interesting what they base them on, because they base them on like everything we've talked about today. There's a different set of criteria about what they see as acceptable views and not acceptable. And I think that the important thing is that the public has got to see this gross attack and this idea that somehow the reason why this terrorist attacks a synagogue is because people are putting up British flags, our flags in Britain, and they're white and middle-aged, and like Gary Neville.
Yeah.
And we can't make it up. It's just, and it's the one group that you can relentlessly smear and take aim at and talk about toxicity and all that. And it's just so tedious. And actually, it is actually the racialization of people and then giving them attributes and traits like gammon and racist and violent and far. It's just, that is the personification of what a racialized idea of someone is. And the thing about Britain, what's so great is that most of the public don't like that. We're compassionate, we're engaging, we live on it, but we are concerned. People are concerned with values. They're concerned with what's happening in their local communities. They're concerned with crime. They're concerned with certain issues. They don't want to just have people that no one knows who they are, why they're there, coming into hotels and things like that, as we've seen with the great pink ladies, that they've now to make them an extremist group. You see how this works, right?
It's insane how they're doing that.
Yeah, and they do that. So there's a protest later at Whitechapel. I've got to get off in a second because I may well go and give some support there.
No, which is sick.
But I think so. Yeah, I think that these are the things that are really central to people, and I think
so.
That,
do you think the cancel culture is okay to be expressed on him right now from the right?
No, I don't want anyone to have the cancel culture. I think that we need to hear him loud and clear and ridicule and say that's wrong. And, he should be accountable in the same way anyone in the public domain is accountable, right? That also means that other people can say things to him. You can't shut them down and everything.
Yeah, of course.
And we're able to have this discussion and debate and just say that's ridiculous. And also partly it's not even when you say it to the person, it's everyone else that's listening. This is the thing about free speech.
That's right.
Because the audience, everyone, the public, the idea the public is listening and they're engaging
always
as we're discussing this with different people, and people can be won over to ideas or views and positions. But yeah, I think it's contemptible. I think it reflects a kind of elitist view. He's got this kind of leisurely situation where he can sit and he's not being impacted by a lot of these things, and he can draw down on the fact he may have come from somewhere at a certain point, but his life's very different to that now.
Yeah,
So the impact on him for these things are very different, right? They're like luxury ideas. They're very different to people that are living in different set of circumstances. And you can virtue signal as much as you want, and you can like end up saying these people are the problem. I think it's disgusting. I think it's really wrong. But I don't want someone to be cancelled because they say, but that means it should be joint and several for everyone. You see, the problem with that's the point I made earlier.
Yeah, I think the public is. I think the people on the right, or maybe the middle-aged men, I think they're tired of always being blamed, and and never have anybody standing up for them. I think that's why we're seeing a lot of people reacting the way they're reacting, which is kind of good to see. Then obviously you always get individuals who are pushing it way far, like, hey, we should cancel him. Hey, get the Salford FC to throw him away. Get United to basically say he never played for them. Oh, get C, do this, do. Come on, we disagree what he said, I understand, but hey, there's a lot of measures here, because whatever you call on him will also happen to your favorite influencer, because he happens to on this side more often than not. So yeah, it's fascinating to see how everybody's reacting to it. The left is quite quiet on this. They're like championing. They're like, hey, go on. You said everything that we want to hear. But on the right, it's like, hey, we got to cancel you. And I think it's okay for people to call whatever they want to call, but cancel culture should not exist, because it's usually expressed a lot than on the right than on the left. But Alan, it's been really great having you on. I've learned a lot. First, about yourself, about Together, the cooperation declaration Together. I've learned a lot, and it seemed like this is a battle that you and I are fighting. We might not know each other fully, but it's a fight that a lot of people are fighting without knowing. And that's the beautiful part of it. It's a thing that everybody disagrees with, and they're coming together virtually to raise their concerns, either by signing a petition, or either by sharing somebody else's tweet, or either by turning up to a protest. And I'm glad that you are the man to lead it. So thank you so much for coming on as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me on your show. It's good stuff.
Good stuff. So where can people find you?
They can find us at Together Dec on X, or at Together Declaration on the other platforms, and at Alan Vibe for me on all platforms, at Alan Vibe.
All right, perfect.
And togetherdeclaration.org, and we've got a petition there, the open letter, and do come and get involved. We'd love to have you in there.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Appreciate you, sir. Thank you.
Great stuff.
Great to have you on. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. That is Alan Miller. He's the guy that you've been seeing on your screen. I mean, for a very long time now, leading the marches, attacking the technocrat machine, the elites. That is Alan Miller. You can find him. His links are going to be in the description. But thank you so much for watching. If you're new to the channel, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Hand to the head salute. Bye-bye, bye-bye, bye-bye. To every single one of you who has walked this road with us, not just the easy win, but the tough, heavy storm, I want to reach out my hand to you, sir, and say thank you so much. Thank you so much, missus, because you didn't just fund a platform. You didn't just support creator. You stood for something sacred, something real. The idea that truth should never be owned by the politicians, by the elites. So thank you so much. Because we're living in a world where headlines are shaped by propagandists. We're living in a world where narratives are created by a politician's agenda. So staying true and telling you the honest truth isn't just hard anymore. It's becoming radical. And we've never taken a penny from any corporation or political party, because we understand that journalism should never be funded by the elites, should never be funded by politicians. Journalists should only be accountable to the people they serve, not the people that they meant to question. But staying independent comes with a lot of cost. It means no more access, no access to fancy meetings, no access to big donors. So we're choosing integrity, we're choosing morals, and we're choosing to put stories in front. And trust me, that's a cost I'm willing to take. That's why we need you, not just as donors, but as people, as defender of truth, as people that believe that truth isn't a luxury, it's a right. It's a right that every single person in a country deserves to get. And if you've been watching the mainstream media lately, I'm sure you've felt a quiet rage when you see a story being told in a different way, when you see the truth being twisted, when you see suffering being ignored, when you see the powerful few rewrite history and take over narrative and rewrite reality. And now this is the moment that stops. Every single contribution that you make to this channel is a refusal to be manipulated. It's a stand against distortion. And if you believe that journalism should be factual, if you believe that journalism should be unbiased, then this is your time for you to stand with us. Donate right now and build this movement with us. Be the reason why the truth survives in this country. Thank you so much.